Hey guys, this is a review for Little Girl Gone, first in a projected series following a woman named Afton Tangler by Gerry Schmitt. This was sent to me by the publisher. And okay, so this is a sort of thriller following the aforementioned Afton, a family liaison officer in Minneapolis, as she deals with a case involving the suddenly kidnapped daughter of Susan Darden, a wealthy woman living in a neighborhood where that sort of thing just doesn't happen. Earlier on the day of the kidnapping, Susan comes across this doll expo while at a shopping mall, where she meets the maker of these extremely lifelike handmade dolls called Reborns. Susan is enamored with these and wants one made of her soon-to-be kidnapped daughter, Elizabeth Ann. Afton is called upon to help Susan deal with this crisis and ends up getting more involved into this case than any other case she's previously dealt with. With aspirations of becoming a detective, this is something she's both excited about and finding difficult to navigate. There are many ups and downs in her relationship to Susan and Susan's husband. There's a sense of anxiety towards becoming so engrossed with the case, as she has 2 children and is recently divorced from her second husband. There's somewhat of an off-kilter hazings from the other police officers that she works with, but with the help of Detective Max Montgomery, she finds herself more useful than both she herself and the people around her would have thought she'd be. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of this story. It's so confused about what it wants to be. It's a somewhat gritty detective thriller mixed with cozy mystery. It's Miss Marple in Gone Girl, and Afton's just so out of place in her own story that it's jarring. It's Angela Lansbury, albeit a bit younger, from Murder, She Wrote, starring in True Detective. It's basically an episode of Bones, but way less believable and with a far less interesting cast. Anyway, it's a mess. We know from the very first chapter who took this girl, this 3-month-old infant, and about that, yeah, it's not a little girl. I know that this kind of title is hot right now, but it should have been called, I don't know, Gone Baby Gone, or something. Wait, that one's taken too. Anyway, we know from the very beginning where Elizabeth Ann has gone, and that absolutely destroys any notion of this being a thriller novel. It's another one of these sort of cat and mouse kind of things, and while honestly the people involved in this kidnapping are far more compelling and interesting than any of the other characters in the book, it totally takes away from the plot. Gerry Schmitt attempts to kind of offset this with a string of misleading clues for Afton and Max to find, seemingly random things that you know are obviously going to mean something at some point, eventually, because if they didn't, they wouldn't even be there in the first place. I mean, that's what the whole book is, basically. Afton and Max stumbling their way through a slew of unrelated occurrences that we, as the reader, know are completely off track from where Elizabeth Ann actually is. Or are they? Ooh. No, this book, it's very predictable, unfortunately. The characters all fall flat, except for maybe Max and the son of the kidnapper. I think Gerry Schmitt does a good job of writing interrogations. If this had been more in that direction, 2 detectives investigating something the reader doesn't already know, however cliche that might be, it might have been actually exciting to read, or the Afton Tangler thriller that it claims to be. It just it lets you know everything you need to know right up front, and does all the thinking for you via exposition, allowing you the choice of whether to actually read it or not in its entirety, because you genuinely know what it'll eventually lead to. And I did finish it in its entirety, but it really didn't do much for me. That being said, I'm in the minority here. It's got mostly 4 and 5 star ratings on Goodreads, which means people must have enjoyed it. If you think you'll like to try out that kind of blend of cozy and thriller, maybe give this a shot, because you could like it a lot more than I did, though I can be a fan of both myself. Gerry Schmitt also writes a slew of specifically cozy mysteries under the name Laura Childs, and this seems to be her breakout into the thriller genre. I don't think I'll be picking up any more of these, though. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it if you've read it, but it just wasn't for me. I didn't find the story to be very believable. I found everything to be really out of place. The characters and the dialogue were all extremely forced and stilted, and there's just one scene in particular towards the beginning of the book between Susan and Afton that made me want to throw the book out the window and made me hate Susan as a character, and I have no idea why Gerry Schmitt set me up to hate Susan as a character so soon, and then just kind of completely disregarded it very quickly after that. We get this kind of scene where she yells at Afton for a very ridiculous reason, and then we kind of just completely forget about it, and it doesn't add to her character whatsoever, doesn't add to anything. And I've got a lot of problems with it, but maybe you'll like it. Give it a shot if you think that sounds interesting. So thank you guys so much for watching. That is all I have to say on this. I do very much appreciate you watching, and thank you so much, and I'll see you later with more.